The daily habits that quietly create millionaires. Most people are waiting for a moment that will never come. A moment when everything finally lines up. When the right opportunity appears. When they feel ready. When the fear disappears. When the time is right. And while they wait, the years pass. The months slip by. And nothing changes. Not because they are unlucky. Not because life treated them unfairly. But because they never understood one simple truth. The people who build extraordinary lives do not do extraordinary things every day. They do ordinary things. Small things. Quiet things. Things that seem almost too simple to matter. And they do them consistently, without applause, without validation, without any visible proof that it is working. That is the secret. Not the dramatic moment. Not the big break. The daily habit. The invisible work. The quiet repetition of something most people dismiss as too small to matter. Let me ask you something. When you think about wealth, what image comes to mind? Most people picture a sudden windfall. A viral idea. A lucky investment. A moment when the universe decides it is their turn. And that image is deeply misleading. Because the millionaires I have watched, the people who built real and lasting wealth, almost none of them experienced a dramatic overnight moment. What they experienced was a slow accumulation of quiet decisions. Made every morning. Every evening. In the small hours when nobody was watching. When there was no reward. When the results were invisible. When quitting would have been easier. That is where wealth is actually created. Not in the big moments. In the small ones. Think about a man I once knew. He was not exceptional by any obvious measure. Average education. Average income at the start. No wealthy family to fall back on. But every single morning, before his family woke up, he sat at the same table with a notebook and a cup of tea. He reviewed his finances. He reviewed his goals. He reviewed what he had learned the day before. Not for hours. 20 minutes, sometimes 30. Just that. Every single morning. For years. When I asked him about it once, he said something I never forgot. He said, "Most people spend their evenings planning tomorrow and their mornings reacting to yesterday. I chose to spend my mornings creating tomorrow." That one sentence told me everything. Because what he had done was not complicated. He had simply decided, years earlier, that the first part of his day would be dedicated to intention rather than reaction. And over time, that single habit changed everything else. You see, the daily habits of successful people are not impressive in isolation. That is exactly why most people overlook them. You read about someone who wakes up early and you think, that cannot possibly be the reason they succeeded. You hear about someone who reads 30 pages a day and you think, 30 pages is nothing. You see someone who reviews their finances every morning and you think, I could do that any time, it does not seem that important. And that dismissal is the very thing that keeps most people stuck. Because what you are judging is the habit in isolation. What you are missing is the habit multiplied across years. Let me explain what I mean. A single brick is useless. You cannot live inside a brick. You cannot shelter from the rain under one brick. But that same brick, combined with thousands of others, placed carefully over time, becomes a house that protects you for decades. No single brick is impressive. The accumulation is everything. And daily habits work exactly the same way. Reading 30 pages today changes nothing. Reading 30 pages every day for 5 years gives you an education that no classroom can provide. Reviewing your finances for 20 minutes this morning changes nothing. Doing it every morning for 10 years transforms your entire relationship with money. This is what most people never see. They judge the habit in isolation and dismiss it as too small to matter. And in doing so, they never build the wall. Here is the truth that most people are not ready to hear. Wealth is not primarily about money. It is about identity. It is about who you become through the daily practice of certain disciplines. The money is simply the external reflection of an internal change that happened long before the bank account changed. And that internal change happens through habits. Through daily, quiet, consistent action. Not because of what those actions produce in a single day, but because of what they do to the person who performs them day after day, year after year. Think about a young woman I heard about once. She was deep in debt in her mid-20s. Not catastrophically, but enough to cause her constant anxiety. She never felt free. Money felt like a cage. She made decent money at her job, but it never seemed like enough. Every month she would reach the end of her paycheck before the end of the month. And she told herself the story that most people in that situation tell themselves. She said, "I will fix this when I earn more. When I get a raise, I will start saving. When the debt is gone, I will start investing. When things settle down, I will take this seriously." And she waited. For 3 years, she waited for things to settle down. But things do not settle down on their own. Life does not create order. People create order. And until she understood that, nothing changed. The shift happened not because her income increased. It happened because she changed one morning habit. She started writing down 3 financial intentions every morning. Not goals in the grand sense. Just intentions for that specific day. Something as simple as, today I will not buy anything I did not plan for. Today I will transfer $20 to savings before I spend anything else. Today I will read 1 page about investing. Just 3 small intentions. Written by hand. Every morning. And she told me years later that within 6 months, her relationship with money had completely changed. Not because $20 a day was making her rich, but because the daily act of setting intentions was slowly building a new identity. She was no longer someone who reacted to money. She was becoming someone who led it. That is what habits do. They are not primarily tools for producing results. They are tools for building character. And character is what eventually produces the results that people are searching for. Now understand this. There is a reason most people never build these habits. And it is not laziness. I want you to hear that clearly. The people who struggle to build consistent habits are not lazy. Laziness is almost always a symptom, never the cause. The actual cause, in most cases, is a lack of identity alignment. Most people try to build habits that belong to a version of themselves they do not yet believe in. They read that successful people wake up early, so they try to wake up early. But deep inside, they do not believe they are the kind of person who wakes up early. And so the habit never sticks. Because habits only stick when they are consistent with how we see ourselves. When the behavior matches the identity. Otherwise, every single morning becomes a battle between the behavior you are trying to build and the identity you actually hold. This is why the first and most important work is not about building habits. It is about building a new story about who you are. Before the alarm. Before the notebook. Before the savings transfer. You have to decide, quietly, privately, firmly, that you are the kind of person who does these things. Not because you feel like it. Not because you see the results yet. But because you have decided that this is who you are now. That decision, made in stillness, changes everything that comes after it. I want to tell you about an older man I once met at a small gathering. He was not the wealthiest person in the room. But there was something about the way he carried himself. A kind of groundedness that you do not often see. I found myself sitting beside him, and we talked for a long time. I asked him, "What is the single thing that changed your life more than anything else?" And he did not hesitate. He said, I stopped waiting to feel motivated. I just decided what kind of person I wanted to become. And then I acted like that person. Every day. Whether I felt like it or not. And I kept going until one day I looked back and realized I had become that person without noticing it happen. I sat with those words for a long time afterward. Because what he had described was not discipline in the painful, punishing sense that most people imagine when they hear that word. What he described was a kind of quiet commitment. A daily returning. Not to a task. To an identity. And that returning, done day after day, gradually became effortless. Not because it stopped requiring effort, but because it became so deeply woven into who he was that not doing it began to feel strange. Ask yourself something right now. When you think about the habits you know would change your life, what comes up? Most people can name them instantly. They already know. Wake up earlier. Read more. Spend less than you earn. Invest consistently. Track your time. Review your goals. Avoid distraction. Learn one new thing every day. The knowledge is not the problem. You already know what needs to be done. So the real question is, why are you not doing it? And the honest answer, for most people, is this. Because doing it today does not feel urgent. Because the results are invisible in the short term. Because the cost of not doing it today seems close to zero. And that invisible cost, paid silently every single day, is how years disappear. Think about time for a moment. Not as a resource that you manage, but as something alive. Something that is constantly in motion whether you use it well or not. Every day that passes, you are either building the version of yourself who changes your life or reinforcing the version of yourself who keeps waiting for something external to change it. There is no neutral ground. You are always moving in one direction or the other. And the direction is determined almost entirely by what you do in the small, ordinary, unremarkable moments of a daily life. Not the big decisions. The small ones. The repeated ones. The ones nobody sees. I knew a man once who spent 15 years working a job he disliked. He was not miserable. He was what I would describe as quietly unfulfilled. He earned enough to get by. He came home tired. He watched television in the evenings. He told himself that one day he would start the business he had always thought about. One day he would read those books sitting on his shelf. One day he would take the course he had bookmarked 3 years ago. One day, when he was less tired. One day, when the kids were older. One day, when things settled down. And then one evening, his daughter said something to him that changed everything. She said, "Dad, you always say one day. But you never say today." He could not sleep that night. Not because the words were cruel, but because they were completely true. The next morning he woke up 40 minutes earlier than usual. He opened one of those books on his shelf. He read for 30 minutes. He wrote one page of ideas for the business he had been thinking about for years. He did not feel dramatically different afterward. But he did it again the next day. And the day after that. And over the following 18 months, everything in his life began to shift. Not because any single morning changed his circumstances, but because those mornings, accumulated over time, changed him. And when you change, your circumstances eventually have no choice but to change with you. Here is something most people never realize about wealth. The outer reality always follows the inner reality. Always. The bank account is a reflection of the mind. The relationships around you are a reflection of the emotional patterns inside you. The opportunities that appear in your life are a reflection of the beliefs you hold about what is possible for you. This is not mystical. It is deeply practical. Because when you consistently practice discipline, when you consistently return to your intentions, when you consistently do the small things that align with who you want to become, you develop competence, clarity, and confidence. And those three qualities attract circumstances and opportunities that are invisible to the person who has not developed them. And so the question is never really about the habit itself. The question is always, what are you becoming through this practice? Because that is what daily habits actually build. Not skills in isolation. Not knowledge in isolation. A person. A different person. Slowly. Quietly. Irreversibly. Let me ask you something that might be uncomfortable. What have you been practicing every day without realizing it? Because here is what most people miss. The absence of a deliberate habit is not a blank space. It is replaced by a default habit. When you do not deliberately choose what to do with your morning gets filled with whatever is easiest. Scrolling. News. Reacting. When you do not deliberately choose what to do with your money flows toward whatever is most convenient. Spending. Comfort. Avoidance. When you do not deliberately choose what to fill your mind with, your mind fills itself with worry, comparison, and distraction. You are always practicing something. The only question is whether you are practicing it deliberately or accidentally. Think about what you have been practicing accidentally for the last few years. Not with judgment. With honesty. Because once you see it clearly, you cannot unsee it. And that clarity is where real change begins. There is a kind of person who exists in almost every community. You have probably met them. They seem, on the surface, like ordinary people. They are not the most dramatic or charismatic people in the room. They do not talk loudly about their goals. They do not post their hustle online. They simply move through their days with a kind of quiet intention. They are up early. They exercise. They read. They review their finances. They spend below their means. They invest consistently. They say no often and easily to things that do not align with where they are going. And when you look at their lives 10 or 15 years later, the results look like luck to people who were not watching. But the people who were watching know what it actually was. It was the daily habit. The quiet repetition. The invisible work. The unglamorous return to intention every single morning. That is the version of yourself that is waiting. Not somewhere out in the future. Not in some transformed version of your external circumstances. It is waiting in tomorrow morning. In the 20 minutes before your family wakes up. In the decision about what to do with that $100 at the end of this month. In the choice about what to read tonight instead of what to watch. That version of yourself is not far away. It is one decision from now. One morning from now. One habit from now. Now I want to talk about something that stops almost every person who tries to build better habits. And it is not what most people expect. It is not lack of willpower. It is not lack of motivation. It is the discomfort of the gap. The gap between who you are today and who you are trying to become. That gap is real. It is uncomfortable. And most people interpret that discomfort as a sign that something is wrong. They think, if this were right for me, it would feel natural. If this were my path, it would feel easy. And so they stop. They interpret the friction as a red light when it is actually just the feeling of growth. Here is the truth about that gap. Every person who has ever built a meaningful life has lived inside that gap for a long time. The gap is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is a sign that you are on a path at all. Growth is not comfortable. Becoming is not comfortable. But the discomfort of becoming is so much lighter than the weight of regret. And regret, unlike growth, compounds with time. The older you get, the heavier it becomes. I spoke once with a woman in her early 50s. She was successful by most measures. But there was a sadness in her eyes that she tried to hide. We talked for a while and eventually she said to me, "I spent 20 years telling myself I would be serious about my money when I had more of it. I spent 20 years telling myself I would invest when the timing was better. And now I look at people my age who did what I kept putting off, and the difference is extraordinary. Not just in money. In freedom. In how they carry themselves. In the options they have. And the gap between their life and mine was not talent. It was not luck. It was what they did every single day when it did not feel urgent or important." She paused for a moment and then said, "I would give anything to have that time back." That conversation never left me. Because what she described so precisely is the price of waiting. And the price is not paid all at once. It is paid in installments. Every day you wait, the price increases slightly. Every year you postpone, the interest compounds. And by the time most people understand this clearly, they are looking backward at years they cannot reclaim. But here is what I want you to understand. If you are reading these words right now, it is not too late. It is never too late to begin the practice. The person who starts today, no matter their age or circumstances, is infinitely ahead of the person who waits one more year. One more month. One more Monday. Because the compounding does not care when you start. It only cares that you start. And once you start and keep going, it does its work faithfully. The habits themselves do not need to be complicated. I want to be very clear about this. Because one of the most common ways people avoid starting is by waiting until they have the perfect system. The perfect morning routine. The perfect budget template. The perfect investment strategy. They spend their energy researching and planning the ideal habit instead of simply beginning the imperfect one that is available right now. And in that search for perfection, they lose months and years that the simple, imperfect, just get started version would have used to actually build something. Review your finances every morning, even if it takes only 10 minutes. Read something that teaches you something every single day, even if it is only one page. Spend less than you earn every single month, even if the gap is small. Invest consistently, even if the amounts seem trivial. Protect your mornings by filling them with intention before you fill them with the world's demands. These are not glamorous instructions. They are not revolutionary insights. They are simply what works. Quietly. Slowly. Irreversibly. And woven through all of them is something deeper than the habit itself. A philosophy. A way of seeing time. A relationship with the future that most people never develop. Because most people live primarily in reaction to the present. The daily habit builders live in a quiet conversation with their future self. Every morning when they sit down, they are, in a sense, sending a message to the person they will be in 5 years. And that person, the one who will exist 5 years from now regardless of what you do today, will either be grateful for what you built or quietly devastated by what you avoided. I want you to think about your future self for a moment. Not as an abstraction. As a real person. As someone you are responsible for. As someone who will either have options or not have them based on what you do in the coming months and years. Because that person is real. They are on their way. Whether you build something for them or not, they are coming. And when they arrive, they will either stand in a life you built deliberately through quiet daily action, or they will stand in a life shaped by the absence of it. That is the weight of the daily habit. Not just the compound interest in a bank account. The compound interest in a life. In a character. In the kind of person you become through the faithful practice of returning, every day, to who you are choosing to be. There is a version of you that keeps waiting for the right moment. That version is real. It has been with you for a long time. It knows how to justify the waiting. It knows how to make inaction sound reasonable. It says, "Start next month." Start when you are more ready. Start when things calm down. And that version of you is not your enemy. It is simply afraid. Afraid of the gap. Afraid of the discomfort. Afraid of trying and discovering it does not work. And underneath all of that, afraid of discovering that it does work, and realizing how much time was spent waiting. But there is another version of you. A quieter version. One that does not speak loudly or justify itself constantly. This version simply acts. It does the small thing today even when it does not feel significant. It reviews the numbers even when they are uncomfortable to look at. It wakes up a little earlier even when the bed is warm. It says no to the unnecessary purchase even when the want is real. It reads the page even when the mind is tired. And this version, over time, becomes someone you would not recognize from where you stand today. Not because something extraordinary happened to them, but because they kept returning, every single day, to the quiet work of becoming. That version is not far from you. It is not a different person in a different life. It is simply a decision away. A morning away. A habit away. And the world will not applaud you while you build it. Your friends might not understand it. Your family might think you are being too serious. There will be no trophy for your 3rd year of consistent morning reviews. No celebration for the 10th year of spending below your means. No spotlight on the quiet discipline that nobody sees. But one day, you will look at your life and understand something completely. You will understand that the wealth you built was never really about the money. It was about what the building of it made you. It was about the identity you constructed one morning at a time, one quiet decision at a time, in all the spaces where nobody was watching and nothing felt urgent and everything whispered that it was okay to wait one more day. You did not wait. And that made all the difference. The habits that create millionaires are quiet. They are ordinary. They are available to almost anyone. But they are built in the silent, unglamorous, daily returning to intention. And they belong to the person who decides, once and finally, that they are no longer willing to trade the life they could build for the comfort of the life they are avoiding. That person can be you. Starting today. Starting now. Starting with whatever small, imperfect, barely enough habit is available to you in this moment. Because that is how it always begins. Not with a dramatic turning point. With a quiet decision. Made once. And then made again tomorrow.